Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fight for Liberty Live. I'm your host, David Fite. I'm here to get you fired up about the men and women who are out here making the world a freer place through politics, activism, comedy, business, and so many other things. But today, we've actually got one of my favorite professions to kind of dive into. We've got a always hilarious comedian coming on the show. But first, real quick, we're going to talk about some of our sponsors here on the show. Starting out with Blood of Tyrants Wine. If you're looking for a nice night in while also sipping on the blood of your enemies and helping destroy the tyrannical state, you have found the right place with Blood of Tyrants Wine. You can choose between a smooth Merlot or a sweet Pinot Grigio, or both, distributed by activists you know and love. Blood of Tyrants Wine is the place to go. You can go to drinkbloodoftyrants.com. Use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order. Like I said, they've got those two wines. They've also got a really great energy tea called Liquid Freedom. It's got about 120 milligrams of caffeine. It's like a really strong cup of coffee. Nothing crazy. It's not a monster or anything like that. But it'll give you a nice energetic buzz that doesn't have nearly as much of a crash because it's sugar-free. It's just a great product. I was chugging them through LibertyCon. It's the only thing that got me through it. So definitely go check out Blood of Tyrants Wine. They're awesome. Our other sponsor for today's episode is Shroom All-in-One Grow Kits. Growing shrooms has never been easier to do in your own home than it is now with these awesome grow kits. Effortlessly grow higher quality shrooms wherever you like. No tubs, no tents, no dedicated grow clean space, no mycology experience needed. Like us, mushrooms breathe oxygen in and CO2 out, and their unique filter strips provide a significantly better fresh air exchange and a superior way to let CO2 out and establish a fortress against mold and bacteria. The process is simple. You just inject your preferred liquid culture into the grow bag, put the bag on a shelf and wait, and then harvest your own homegrown mushrooms. You can order yours today at shroomgarden.com. And again, use promo code FSM, or you can click the link below. That's going to save you $5 on your first order. That is SHRUM garden.com, promo code FSM. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight is an hilarious sketch comic, stand-up comedian, and author of That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, the one and only Lou Perez. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. And I got to say, your sponsors are great. I know I haven't tried the shrooms, but I do know that Blood of Tyrants is a very tasty wine. Unfortunately, I'm in New Jersey, so I can't get it in New Jersey. Right. With which, as I'm sure will be a theme, goddamn government, just messing it up. I'm like, why can't I just get this bottle of wine of like a company that I like and the people I like?
Dude, being somewhat involved behind the scenes on that business as well, like from the beginning or fairly early stages, just watching all of the hoops that they had to jump through just to get to where they are now, which is available in most states, ? And it's ridiculous. You have to get a separate license in every single state to be able to sell alcohol in that state. And then you have to get, permission to ship it from whatever state it's being made in to whatever state it's being shipped to. And sometimes, like, I think it's Nevada that they have to also get permission to drive through to get it from California to Texas or something. Like they're one of the states, I don't remember which one it is like they're not even trying to make it or sell it in that state, but the fact that it has to pass through it and like possibly stop at like a rest stop on the truck or whatever because it's X amount of miles from where it starts. It's a whole nother license. So yeah,
and it's one of those things where I haven't heard anybody talking about it, and I found out only I guess a couple of years ago when I first tried Blood of Tyrants, and yeah, it's like nobody talks about it. Like it's not in the news. There are people like I've been drinking wine for a very long time. I had no idea, and I think it's one of those things. I have a buddy of mine who makes really great homemade hot sauce and all these different flavors. He has like a nice habanero mango and stuff, just really great stuff. And he's kind of like a centrist guy, but he's like, yeah, man, you want to make a libertarian, just tell him to try to start a business, because he tried to start he wanted to start a little, hot sauce shop out of his kitchen. It's like, nope, do it in your own kitchen. You need a professional kitchen and all that. And it's just so funny, just like, funny and in a bad way. Just how, lives could be, just fucked with on a micro level when you're just trying to do something as simple as just get a nice bottle of wine to people who want to buy it,
Right. And I always love that we're going all the way off topic right off the bat, but I'm cool with it. I always love when the, leftist type Democrat adjacent type people will always tell us that, libertarians just hate poor people and we just want people to suffer. I literally saw a post today it was the picture of who even is that? Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton,
like,
yeah.
Just don't be poor shirt.
Yeah, stop being poor, I think, yeah.
Or stop being poor. And, I've come to realize that libertarianism is just a bunch of fancy ways to say this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. We're the ones actually trying to help the poor people, because the poor people are the ones that can't afford to jump through all those stupid hoops to operate a business. When I was living in Brooklyn, one of my good friends and neighbors sold meals out of her apartment. She would have just like the package, like styrofoam plates, and it was like a family dinner basically. It was usually like either chicken or pork or something and rice and the whole. She was Caribbean. It was great food. And she would sell probably 30, 40 of those a day, just out of her kitchen. And went on this rant to me when I told her I was running for New York City Council about like how terrible the policies are, that she can't, operate above board. She can't accept credit cards. She can't, do anything because it would cost tens of thousands of dollars to jump through the state's hoops. And I was like, dude, you don't have to sell me on this occupational license. I like literally showed her the stuff. I was like, right there, it's on the top of my like to-do list. I hate this. I'm already on your side. This is something we've been fighting against for decades, but people just kept telling you we were awful, so you didn't listen. Yeah. And talk about, something where, you could have, you can make a real world impact, on the local level by getting rid of, like occupational licensing like that. The Institute for Justice, does a Pacific Legal Foundation, Institute for Justice. So many of their cases are just, it's about, here's the little guy who wants to, start something, become an entrepreneur, and here's the state, squashing them for it. And yeah, I mean, things like, I remember having a discussion with a friend of mine who's kind of like a lefty or left Democrat, and it's sort of like I think with a lot of party politics, you're used to being like on the defensive. If you're a staunch Democrat or a staunch Republican and you come into and you have a disagreement, you kind of assume that the other person is of the other party, so then it must be a debate as opposed to trying to figure out, what's going on. And in fact, I'm a libertarian, so I'm not even, a part of the two. And I brought up how in Washington, I think it was in either
Washington D.C. or Virginia, where tour guides needed to have a license to operate. A tour guide to put together a tour, to guide, to lead people around and say, this is where Thomas Jefferson used to get his haircut.
What?
You would need that, but it was an occupational licensing, and there was a part of him that I it was kind of short circuiting, because he obviously knows that it's a terrible a terrible thing, because he's a big free speech person, but also it couldn't compute with but wait a minute, my party is blah blah blah, might be involved in that, so there must be a good reason for it. You want to make sure that people are getting cheated. It's like, what, you're not getting cheated on a freaking tour? Like, if you go on a tour and it sucks, the tour guide sucks. I mean, it's not like it's going to do any irreparable harm to you, So
yeah, I mean, I guess I've always argued, and I am an actual anarchist, not even a minarchist, but I've always argued that there's actually like a logical happy medium on a lot of these issues, where, so let's say for that one, for the tour guide, you shouldn't need a license to take private citizen, just people who choose to give you their money on a tour. If you want to charter with public school systems and whatnot to do class field trips and operate above and beyond that in some idea, I know what I'm talking about, and to the level where I can replace an actual in-school teacher for the day and lead them around, and people are trusting their kids to education to me, then maybe there's somebody in the government that takes the tour first and makes sure it's not bullshit and goes, all right, there you go, you're good.
Right.
And similarly to even the hot sauce thing, I think that there could be established a somewhat flexible threshold where, as long as you're not selling this much or doing this much, if you can operate above board at a low level to build up that clientele and the finances and everything, to then maybe go through the stuff. If you want to be sold in grocery stores, then maybe you should have to go through some FDA something. But if you're just trying to sell it out of your house, no. And, I think there's a middle ground to be had there, that even the Democrats are nope, it's perfect. The FDA works exactly how it should. And they're just delusional.
Well, also, it's something the reality is if you're libertarian, if you're an anarchist, every single day you have to deal with the state and statists, and it's sort of trying to find ways of coexisting, without losing your mind, or hopefully losing more of your freedom, and that's that's an important thing. I've had really great conversations with friends of mine who are critics of libertarianism, or critics of the limits of libertarianism, and it's I got to be open to hear that, because the reality is I'm fortunate. I live in a section of New Jersey that's kind of mixed. There's a lot of Republicans, there's Democrats, there's a lot of people with the Gadsden flag flying right under the stars and stripes. It's an interesting dynamic here, but ultimately it's the same way that when it comes to national politics, there's a lot of divisiveness. On local politics, there's a lot of divisiveness, and it's it's having to pick your battles, for sure.
Yeah, it's and that's where people like you come in handy to kind of break some of that ice and some of that divisiveness and make some light out of it, which is why I fucking love political comedians. I mean, I love comedy in general. I'm a super fan of the art, but the people, honestly, your Stop Making Me Defend Trump video from was that 2017, 2018, something like that?
Something like that. I think it's 8 years ago or something. Crazy.
Yeah. That was, I think, the first video of yours I ever saw. and I loved it because it was so accurate to what I was living through on a daily basis with all of my lefty friends around me. And it was just like, this dude gets it. This dude is like right on the money, and it's great content. And I feel like it was right around there, a little bit after, but SNL used to be huge and then kind of fell off. And then this kind of independent sketch comedy became more popular again. And a lot of it ended up a little bit more libertarian based than SNL has ever been. And I was just like, all right, I'm okay with this being the replacement. This is great. I love this.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that sketch like resonates so much with so many people. Like if there is like one sketch that people bring up or will be like, oh, I knew you from somewhere. It's that one. Yeah. Stop making me defend Donald Trump. And it came up again during the last campaign, when, things were, heated between Kamala and Trump. People were resharing that and saying like, this is my life now, every single day. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, with SNL, it's amazing just how much comedy changed, or at least the entryways into comedy changed. Over the past. I mean, really, I would say ever since kind of like YouTube started, 2000, I'd say like 2008, 2009, because it was suddenly like, SNL was now competing with YouTubers. There was a time when in the early days of YouTube where me and my partner, and maybe people might know Greg and Lou, that was our comedy duo. There was a time where if we had an idea, we were like, okay, can we do this idea, get it shot, get it edited, and get it out before Saturday night, before SNL goes out? Because there was always a chance. It was like SNL might do this, they might do this idea or something similar, especially if it's like something that was kind of like happening in the in the news or the culture. And because it would be the worst thing. You spend like a few days and all that manpower and hours and money trying to make something, and then you can't put it out because fucking Tom Hanks is hosting SNL, and they did it. But then it was sort of like with the growth of YouTube, and then Cracked was doing videos, Funny or Die, College Humor. It was just so much competition when it came to sketch comedy. And then, I honestly can't tell you the last time I ever thought like, oh, I better get this idea done because SNL is going to do it. It really hasn't been a thing in so long. And I think that's continued too, where anytime SNL like does something like that, every time they do like a solid video, people are like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe this happened. It's like, yeah, they've been batting, I don't know, 100 for however many years. Because I think a lot of people are just used to seeing really, great stuff online from more independent content creators, producers.
Yeah.
Community.
Yeah, I think almost the only thing that SNL has going for it now is just the celebrity-ness of it. And, they have the host every week that gets to be in it. And then you can, like you said, like, oh, Tom Hanks was in this comedy sketch like that. I might actually watch that. Or it's funny. I actually just watched, what was that, 2-3 weeks ago, when Shane Gillis hosted. And that's the first time I watched in almost an entire year since the last time Shane hosted.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch anything in between that.
And it felt like I didn't watch it, but I felt like I'm like, didn't Shane just host? Like it almost felt like, did they just get him like every week? In a way, like it's the amount of times that I check in, and I haven't seen the sketch, but I heard there's like one called Couple of Beers or something like that. It's supposed to be excellent. Yes. I gotta watch that. But yeah, with SNL, I was on a flight I performed for Young Americans for Liberty outside of San Francisco. They had like a little get together, and it was fun getting to do fly out and do comedy. And on the way there, it was like a 6-hour flight. So I was watching whatever was available to me on United, and I watched the movie Saturday Night, which is about the first night of SNL, being made. And I had heard a lot of good things about it, and I was watching the movie, and I really loved it. I was like, oh my god, it was something where I was quickly over my surprise at how much I loved it. I was just sort of like almost immediately in. I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm enjoying everything, and it was something. There's something to be said about actors being able to play actors who were, just the most well-known people. Someone's playing Chevy Chase, someone's playing George Carlin, somebody's playing, all these, John Belushi, all these, these legends, these luminaries of comedy. And there was one part, it was a couple of hours. It was towards the end of the movie, and Lorne Michaels, the character the actor who's playing Lorne Michaels, is sort of put on the spot and asked, like, what is this show? And he just laid out, just like, I only saw it once, so I can't do it justice, but like laying out like what Saturday Night was. It was like, it was a night out in the city. It's an after hours. It's meeting a chick at a bodega and going to, to a party and stuff. And I actually, the sentimentalist in me, I actually got tears in my eyes, and I'm like, man, it was, it felt just so real, and something that existed at one point in time, that the essence of that show, that I think was, and it was like, man, this was an important show. This is an incredibly important show. Maybe possibly the most important comedy show in history, at least in American TV history. And 50 years, you've had a long run. So I think I'm a little more, having watched that movie and having done comedy for as long as I have, I think I'm a little more like, whatever. They'll get it back here and there. Who cares?
It does seem like they are starting to, with them bringing like Shane back. Actually, because I had the same thought when I saw him hosting again. I was like, he has to be the quickest back-to-back host ever.
Yeah,
he's not even close. I like the deep dive to figure out who was, and he's like 15th or 16th on the list, and there's like quite a few people that have done it multiple times faster. But that's like Chevy Chase and Adam Sandler, and a couple of the. Most of the other people are ones that used to be on the show and then became too famous for SNL and then come back and host a bunch. And then there was like him and just a few other like super famous people. But, having him back on is definitely a little bit better than some of the stuff that they've been doing. I don't know. Yeah, I think they might come around to it. I was a big fan of 30 Rock for the like half. Kind of, obviously it's not about SNL, but it's kind of about SNL, and there's a lot of like that kind of inside jokey humor from a lot of the OGs from SNL, and that show was definitely a big part of, I think, the start of my appreciation for like mainstream media comedy, but just comedy in general.
And Tina Fey is, she's a genius, man. Yeah. Like she's incredible, comedy mind. A friend of mine just shared a sketch the other day. It was Tina Fey was performing. I think it was at Just for Laughs? It might have been some years back, and she's doing like a musical number where she's like this, like sexy singer, and she's standing behind you know, it kind of looks like a bar, so you only see her from the top up, and you know, she's, you know, singing and she's sultry and all that, and she comes around the bar, and we can finally see her whole body, and she has the fattest legs, just gross, just obese, just you know, just revolting legs, but playing it like she's just this, you know, the sexiest woman around. And it was really, really funny. And also a question of, there's always that question of like, you know, could you make this now? You know, could you make this, you know, make this now? I mean, there was years ago, Tina Fey was on Howard Stern, and it's funny enough, she was complaining about Paris Hilton, like being like one of the worst, you know, either hosts or guests or, you know, hangers on at SNL or whatever, and just saying like she described like her and her fucking tranny hands. That's how she described Paris Hilton's hands. And it's like, oh, you'd get in trouble now. You can't.
Oh yeah,
I don't think you could say that. But she's really great. The stuff that she would do with Amy Poehler, yeah, even like when they would host award shows and stuff, it was just you know, it's a great comedians.
Yeah. And I hate that some of them got too political, and like Tina gets so much shit now just for being on the left side of the aisle. And in my opinion, you know, just like me being a Christian didn't make me a Tim Tebow fan, like me not being a Democrat doesn't make me hate Tina Fey for being like super PC now. And, you know, whatever, or some of those other comedians. Like, I don't care about your political opinions if I'm trying to watch your comedy. If your political opinions align with mine, it might make you more relatable and funnier to me. But that's about it.
Yeah.
You know, that's really, you know, you can only get better with your political views versus mine. Like, if you're a funny comedian, you're a funny comedian. I don't care.
And I think it's important too, to hear the comedian out, hear the bit out in its entirety, because I've jumped the gun a number of times and like started hating something at the beginning, and then there's a turn and I'm like, oh wow, that's actually, oh man, that's actually really good. And an example of that is, I think it was the first sketch back after Trump won on SNL, and they like kind of all lined up, and it was like kind of very somber, and they started talking, and I think I immediately started tweeting something like, can you imagine the sketch that was thrown out, you know, to make room for this one. And I let that go. And then I realized, oh, it's like a 6-minute sketch, and I just watched 30 seconds of it. Let's see where they go with it. And where they went was, they had all the cast members basically like saying, like, you know, just, you know, we're huge fans of Donald Trump. Like, you know, like, don't, you know, we are huge, like, we all voted for you. And it was such a great bit, and very well done, and well executed. And it's like, and it was, they don't know who I am, but in a way, it was sort of a call out of me. It says like, you see, Lou, you son of a bitch, you see, we got you, you asshole. You think that you know where we're gonna go with this, and look, we just showed you a very good exercise in comedy that you didn't know where it was gonna go, and you jumped the gun. You asshole, be better. So I'm trying to be better, and you know, I got to make sure I watch the whole bit before I open my dumb mouth.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten caught on that one a couple of times, where, especially that like you're already tweeting a response. You're like, I don't want to listen to the rest of this shit. This is just terrible. I remember I did that to a comedy special. Maybe about a year and a half ago. I was watching something, and maybe 20 minutes in, he straight up goes, libertarians are fucking stupid. And I go, oh God, where is this gonna go? And you know, it's not an inside baseball. Like you can tell he's not a libertarian.
Well, the fact that even someone would bring up the word libertarian it's already jarring. Like, what? How do you even know? Why do you even know that word?
He instantly went into like, actually picking on anarchists while not identifying them correctly, and then that, like, they just want chaos and whatever. And I was like, oh god, this is going to be terrible. We're only 20 minutes into this special and he's already just straight dogging on my political, like, I don't care if you agree with me, but don't just stand up there and call me an idiot. But he ended up like maybe 15 minutes later, after a bunch of other jokes and punchlines, you get to this point where he's basically saying that even though we're morons, we're less of morons than the team sports morons.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up almost kind of being like a very blue-pilled centrist, but centrist, like, both parties are dumb, both sides are dumb. And he spent significantly more time shitting on both of the other parties than he did anyone in the middle. But he starts it off and tees it off with just dogging on us.
Well, when he started off saying David Fite is an asshole. It's like, he is the worst. And then you're like, wait a minute, hold on. There's a punchline here.
Yeah. It was really interesting and jarring too, because for a while, anytime I talked to Dave Smith, he was telling me about this comedian Nate Bargatze, and he's just like the funniest fucking dude. And anytime I saw Dave on other people's shows or on mine or even in person, sometimes he was just singing this guy's praises. I'm like, all right, let me fucking check it out. Like, you've said it 17 times now, I'll finally watch something. And I'm watching one where he's within the first 20 minutes, he's, talking about COVID and how terrible people who didn't wear masks were. And like, not too hard, but like definitely not one of us on that issue. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just like jarringly not libertarian. And I was just like, that's so strange that the only people I had this recommendation from were Luis Gomez and Dave Smith. Like, it wasn't the other side of it that were telling me to watch this guy. It was my friends. But he's funny as fuck. He's a great comedian.
And a clean comedian too. Mm. Yeah. And he's, I remember, man, this is probably, God, how many years ago? This is a long time ago, where I went to a bringer show. A comedian that I knew was doing a bringer show at Caroline's. For those of you who don't know what a bringer show is, it's a showcase. You have a lot of, like, mostly people who have like kind of just starting out in comedy. And in order to perform, you have to bring a certain amount of people. So in the past, I've done bringer shows. There was one time I did a bringer show. You're supposed to bring 5. I think I brought like 30 people. Like, my girlfriend at the time was very supportive of me getting up and doing 6 minutes of comedy, and like she brought like her work friends and stuff. But it was a bringer show at Caroline's, and Nate Bargatze was the host. So I think he was probably like a past regular there, meaning like a professional there who played there often, and he hosted. And that was like, God, man, so long ago. And I found out something interesting. A friend of mine, Doc Dixon, is a magician, a comedian magician. And he was on my podcast, and he told me about Nate, and Nate's dad is a magician. And Nate will often have his dad open for him, which I think is it's just one of the coolest things.
That's
it's like,
so cute.
It's like, here your son, has been, grinding and doing comedy and has such a successful career, and then, having your dad open for you. I think that's dope. I mean, maybe, with enough luck, maybe both of my boys will, be more successful than me, and be able to throw me a few spots here and there.
Yeah, you'll open up for them, maybe.
Right.
I also love that he has his daughter like introduce him at the beginning of all of his specials. At least the
good.
specials. I don't know. I'm assuming she doesn't go on the road with him too much, but from the first special, she's like 3 and barely or something like that, like barely pronounced it, like my daddy Nate Bargatze, and now she's like 9 or whatever, and like super into it. But you just kind of get to watch just like her grow up throughout the specials too, and it's just like a super wholesome because he like comes up and gives her a hug and goes up on stage, and it's just like. Yeah, he's a super family-friendly, clean comedian. It's a kind of refreshing difference from most of what I watch, which is more like Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan. And like,
right. Yeah. No, and it's just, I mean, there's something that's really great about, comedy in particular. And then you have, all these comedians with different styles. And then also you have these comedians that are like decades deep into the work, and that they're still able to do it. They're still able to compete, like professional athletes. I mean, you have such a small window, as far as, being able to compete. My wife was a dancer, a modern dancer, and they're just like athletes in this similar thing. It's like ballerinas, dancers. There's only so long you can go at being at the top of your craft before your bones just start failing on you. Your body just starts failing on you. But that's the great thing about, comedy. I mean, if you were going to list, I would say probably, like the top, 10, 20 comedians operating right now, a lot of them are in their late 40s, early 50s, maybe even older than that. Yeah. And it's, that's something too. Like just as a comedian, I'm able to look like, man, I'm going to be really good in 20 years. I'll be 60. I'll be 63. But like, man, I think I'll be really fucking good in 20 years from now. So,
I mean, and there's still 80, 90-year-olds killing it out there. So, you're only halfway through.
I'm only halfway through, man.
There you go.
my 80s, my tour at 86 is going to be a fun one. So.
If we still have a country by then.
Yeah.
So when was the moment that you noticed, like, I'm actually pretty fucking funny and I might be able to make a career out of this?
Oh, the career part. I don't know if I ever got that. The career part. Let's see. Well, I think the funny part, I mean, it was always, funny with my friends and stuff. But when it really kicked in was in college, when I was doing improv comedy and sketch comedy. And I think when I performed in sketches that I wrote and those killed in front of a live audience, I was like, okay, this is something that I want more of. I think that's a really important, it's really necessary as a comedian to have, complete strangers show you that you're funny, that they're, for the most part, strangers aren't going to bullshit you because, they don't have a personal relationship with you. And then, from there, like, doing comedy and posting videos in the early days of YouTube and kind of, building that up. And then I think with We the Internet was a really, that was a really important, point in my career, because it was sort of, I had created the job, where We the Internet in the early days of it, there were like a lot of different voices and stuff. And I was kind of one of those voices producing videos, like the one Stop Making Me Defend Donald Trump. And I had talked with like the, creative director and said, hey, you need a filter or a lens for everything to kind of go through, so it all makes sense, so there's like a voice here. You need like a head writer. And she was like, well, do you want to be the head writer? And I was like, yeah. And from there it was sort of like I was the head writer and producer, and taking on that responsibility made it real, and also getting a check for it made it quite real. And it was like, okay, cool. Here's something where I'm able to take, my years of experience and bring it together and try to make something, new and solid and grow from it. So yeah, that was a big thing. Yeah, I guess that's like, 2015 was probably like 10 years ago, where I was like, oh, okay, stuff started to come together really.
That's awesome. The public reassurance thing is definitely such an important part to so many of like that style of a career, or even just if it's a hobby kind of thing. Like I remember the first time I ever went to an event where there were people that watched my show at that event and got fanboyed at by like strangers for a podcast that at the time had very it's been kind of up and down throughout the years, but it was not at the biggest up, not even close. And I went to an LPPA convention, and I think it was 2021, and just had like people be like, oh my gosh, David Fite, so nice to meet you, this is so awesome. And it was definitely, I was like, all right, I have to keep doing this, because I didn't shake all those hands and tell them, yeah, I'll keep up the good work, to not keep up the good work. So we have to push through when there's none of those people saying keep up the good work, and make it through those dips, because I looked people in the eye and I said, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, and it's also very meaningful to get that to get that kind of response, so many times like you put stuff out there, you're kind of putting it out into the void. You have no idea what's who's seeing it, or depending on which platform you're putting stuff on. You're like, I mean, there was a time where Facebook was counting like 3-second views as a view, and it's like does that count? Like somebody saw my mug kind of go across the screen, like does that really count? But to have people who really support your work and check in and look for any opportunity to help you out, whether it's monetarily or sharing your work, it's all really important.
Yeah. I remember those days of Facebook. That was great. That's like when I first started the show, it was still like that. And I had one friend who wasn't involved with the show or the network or anything in any real capacity, but was also just an obnoxious asshole type person who didn't care about how annoying he was being, and would just share my Facebook stream into almost every group he's a part of, just all the groups, just all over the place. Yeah. So I'm getting my show shared into like specific synagogue discussion groups and stuff, like just random groups. But it always jacked the Facebook viewership way up. So within the first couple of months, my Facebook were showing as 2,500 to 5,000 views an episode. And I was like, holy shit, this is great. And yeah, most of them were 3 seconds. When you narrowed it down to like 10 minutes or more, it dropped all the way down to like 6 people actually watched.
Yeah, you're like, I know I'm supposed to look at the analytics, but I don't want to look at the analytics because I like the fantasy a lot more. Yeah, there was a time Facebook was the jam, man. There was it was the perfect platform, because you could put anything out there. You could put video, photo, text, and that comment section, and especially like doing like political satire, and getting to fuck with people is always fun. I love there's so many the amount of times that I've had comments like, you're just a clown. It's like, yeah man, I'm a clown. Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole point. Yeah,
you're just doing this for attention. Yeah, it's my job. My job is to get attention on me,
Yeah. So I feel a little bit bad calling people out for like engagement baiting, because I can't talk. That's a good chunk of what I'm doing too. Like I saw somebody get specifically called out on Twitter the other day for including an other like in a vote that they were doing, or a poll. Because it was like, oh, you put an other there for people to comment. That's just engagement farming. And the person who posted it was like, yes, that's exactly why I did that.
It's like, well, it's a poll, right? So just the nature of it, you want people to engage with it. I know of a couple of people who do polls now and then who care about the results of it, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, just get
It's
that.
almost always engagement bait.
Yeah.
Or it's a genuine, like, settle this argument. That's more what I use Twitter polls for. Is it's like, all right, my wife and I are arguing about this. Who's right? It's about 50-50. But yeah, I don't know. It is a weird world now with kind of everybody being monetized, or not everybody, but a lot of people being monetized, and most of your feed being, that verified, monetized people who are really just on there to get as many clicks as possible. And it's super, negatively incentivized to, be dishonest or intentionally inflammatory or whatever. I feel like in comedy and in some other things, that's fun and that's allowed and that should happen. But now it's to where people that call themselves journalists and, reporters or whatever they want to call themselves are also engaging in that same behavior. And it's worse than mainstream media ever was, I think, a good chunk of it.
Well, I've been seeing people have been using kind of like AI to have like multiple accounts posting stuff just around the clock, something that's just like a normal human being would just be impossible to do. So there's, and I think I'm talking about X in particular. That's, I guess that's where I spend probably more time than I should, but it's so much fun. And then after a while, it's sort of like, are these bots or programs that are running, they're basically sending me, when they start sharing videos that came out like 10 years ago and like with the same, like, can you believe, what's going on in Europe? And it's like, that's from 12 years ago, that video. It's like, you're obviously trying to, get some either monetary compensation or I don't know, psyops. I guess I need to get into the psyop business, man, because I think it's just amazing the idea that someone's being paid to post shit to I don't know, be divisive. So
that would be such an easy fucking job.
So easy, yeah.
They really should start hiring libertarians into like the CIA and whatever to do these, because we're already,
that would be
being divisive.
Well, that would be amazing if libertarians were the ultimate psyop. It's like the anti-government, the anti-government people are with the government. So.
There are plenty of people who think that that's already the case, especially if we're talking about the party itself.
Sure.
Or former leadership. So how did you get involved with the Free the People?
Yeah, so I've been for years. I've been a fan of Matt Kibbe's and the stuff that they were doing. And a couple of years ago, they released, I think it was like their first biographical documentary about Thomas Massey living off the grid. And it's fantastic. The dude, he lives on a farm that he built, and it's completely off the grid. So he produces his own electricity with not magic, but solar panels and stuff. And it goes through, he explains like how he made everything and the reality of depending on like solar or burning your own wood and that sort of thing. It's a brilliant documentary. I thought it was awesome, and it looks beautiful. And ever since then, I was like, oh, it would be so cool to be able to work on something together. And then the opportunity came a couple of years ago. Matt and Terry, his wife and partner, we talked about like doing a comedy series called, and I was like, I'm in, because you guys do great stuff. I'm a fan of yours, and I think there's I really like being able to make comedy videos that have like a high production value to it. You know, they don't have to, and it doesn't have to be, you know, like overly expensive. You don't have to, you know, be shelling out, you know, ungodly amounts of money for stuff to look great. But like, you know, taking every short video and treating it with the care that you would like a big, you know, a big production. So yeah, we have our series, Comedy is Murder. And I think, how many videos? We're like 11 or 12 videos in, and we're going to produce some more. And one of the videos, a parody of James Bond. James Bond goes after hate speech.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was shared. Elon Musk shared it on X, and it, you know, passed the 40 million view mark, which was pretty great. So
Nice.
that was a lot of fun. I was picking up my wife and I were picking up our kids from their school, and I was like, you know, dicking around on my phone, and I was looking at my notifications, and it showed that Elon Musk had liked the video, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I just started getting flooded with like all this stuff, and I'm like, no way, is this possible? And then I saw that he had actually shared it, and yeah, talk about like blowing up. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's wild how popular he is, and how quickly he can make a nobody that was their first video just boom have just crazy amounts of views and success that like really launch people off. Elon Musk is the new SNL. Like, you know, as far as the like, here, I like this, you're funny, go be famous. Like, he's that person that instead of Lauren, like, he kind of took that spot.
Well, and all the stuff that he's doing. I mean, the other day they rescued astronauts. It's like, while he's doing that and like, you know, intercepting or catching rockets that he just fired off, he's, you know, doing, you know, boomer memes and stuff. Like I don't know how that mind works or how he's able to accomplish everything that he does. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it's golden, and it's comedy gold too. So much of his stuff is just like, whether it's just it by itself or the amount of jokes you can make off of it, he is both good and bad. He's hilarious. Like, sometimes he just has the biggest gap, and other time, dude, there is years of content now to be made out of just how much the media went nuts about the Nazi salute thing. Forever we can and it, like, people are still talking about, like, Bill Burr just like went off about it like 2 or 3 days ago, and then everybody's sharing a fucking still of him doing the same thing on one of his specials.
Well, what's funny with the Burr thing, and Burr's one of those comedians. He has such amazing, you know, comedy bits. Like this one, I hosted years ago. I hosted a show in LA that he was on. It was like kind of like a special event, and it was really cool. The comedian who put it together, she had asked me to host it, and which was like a real act of faith, I think, on her part. I was like, cool, this is like, wow, she trusts me. And he was great. I mean, it was a kind of in a small bar in downtown LA, and he did his bit the first time I'd heard it about first ladies, and basically how, you know, kind of pointless and talentless they are, and the idea that just because you're married to the president that somehow we need to listen to you. So, you know, I think on the comedy side for years, I mean, I was just like, he's just great. And then I would say, like, over the past few months, his more, you know, political, cultural commentary outside of just like straight stand up has been wanting. You know, it's been lacking quite a bit. And even that, like, you bring up the Elon's, I throw my heart to you, the salute or whatever. It's not like Bill had an interesting angle on it. when he brought it up, it was just sort of like a list of things to bring up about the guy. So yeah, I don't know what his deal is as far as politics go, but I feel like he's I'm not a fan of his recent takes, but I am a fan of him at his best, which is stand-up comedy.
Yeah, even his last special, the one that he did at Red Rocks, was also wanting. There were a couple of really good jokes in it, but I feel like that was kind of the start of that was maybe like a year ago, and then it's just been from there. What's crazy is he used to be so far on the other side of the PC thing, right? He was like one of the quote unquote worst comics out there, as far as, especially in the mainstream, as far as like talking shit about women and sometimes minorities, and like, he up until like 2 years ago had punchlines in his stand-up routine about hitting people, like hitting women, and like a domestics, like was like way on that side of things, where I thought maybe he like definitely crossed lines in some of his jokes that like I definitely wouldn't say publicly, to now he's like this weird like cucked lefty feminist comedian who's like, oh, we have to, men are actually the whole problem with everything, and women have never done anything wrong ever. And it's
he's also one of the many millionaires against billionaires, which is an interesting class war that we'll see how that shakes out.
I think the billionaires win.
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah. And the whole, like Free Luigi shit and praising praising that guy. I'm not with that.
That one I have mixed feelings on. That one I don't hate anybody for their take on that one. Like the people who are Free Luigi, I'm like, all right, sure. And the people who are like, hang him, I'm like, all right, sure. I care as little about both Luigi and the dude he killed. Like I don't care about either of them. Like both shitty people who, whatever the world decides to do with them, they can have fun doing it.
Well, with the Luigi thing, it's like, I think he's pleading not guilty, which I think is unfair. It's like, no, you don't get to have all this fucking praise of being an assassin and then be like, oh, well, actually not guilty. It's like, no, man, you gotta give the pussy back. All these chicks lining up to see you in court and all that. They're lining up to seeing an innocent man, as opposed to, somebody who, wanted to change history.
Well, I said that from almost the beginning. I think I posted it, but I definitely went on like a rant on a like Zoom call with like 10 of my friends, like the day he got arrested, because there was a bunch of people saying like, oh, it's not the same guy, and like the pictures didn't look the same. And I'm like, he realized he looked enough like the guy that did it to go out there and just like, he only had to somewhat pretend to be the person, like write a weird manifesto about why you did it, go hang out ominously in public until somebody picks you up, and become a millionaire. Like his Twitter account's got like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of follows now. It had like 150 when it happened. Like he just exploded out of nowhere. He's got any podcast deal or whatever he wants to do. He's got a Sirius XM show if he wants. If he actually is innocent and pulled this off, he will still maintain most of the popularity, because most people won't care. Same with like the Tiffany Gomez chick. She had like one crazy video of her that got posted to the internet of her freaking out on an airplane. And now she's like a commentator that people care about her opinion on things. It's like,
wow. Oh, wow. She has a name. I didn't know that. I didn't know she had a real name.
She has like a show on like the Blaze TV or something like that now.
No way, on the Blaze.
She's been on it multiple times because Alex Stein literally proposed to her on his show.
Oh, Alex is great, man. I got to do Alex's show a while back, he was so funny. And he does screaming so well. Like he's such a big dude too. He's like this big, intimidating guy. He has like kind of like a baby face. Yeah, he's so fun. I've become such a big fan of his especially after meeting him and getting to be on the show for a little bit. Yeah, he's great.
He's funny as hell. I had him on with him and Spike Cohen together. Was a really fun conversation.
I love Spike. Yeah,
it's talking about the very different but very similar of them both going into city council meetings and fucking shit up. But then they're drastically different approaches to it. It was a really fun conversation. But yeah, Alex is funny as hell. I'm really excited to see some of the, that like Liberty comedy crossover. I firmly believe it's been there since the beginning of the art form, but it's kind of coming back, and it's coming back in the mainstream where, I'll bump into just a random person on the street and ask them who their top 5 comedians are, and at least one of them is somebody that would self-identify as a libertarian, whether it's like Rogan or I'm gonna space, like Drew Carey is a libertarian. Mm-hmm. I'm spacing on a couple of the other names, but like interesting, important, popular people. Theo Vaughn's not far off. A lot of these like popular podcasters and comedians are like way closer to us than it was 10 years ago. And I don't know, it's exciting to see for sure.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's exciting to perform too for those audiences. Like, during COVID, I went and I got to do a show in New Hampshire at the Shell, cool. And it was like I brought up 2 comedy friends of mine, Harry Turgenian and Boris Heiken. We made the trip up, and it felt like normal for the first time in a long time, because we were in New York, kind of shut down in so many aspects. And you go up there and, here's a room packed full of people. And I don't think anybody's wearing a mask. A couple of things to get used to, I had to, I let my boys know, like, people are going to be open carrying. So there's that. But other than that, I mean, it felt like just like, oh, we're here doing a comedy show for an audience that wants to be there, a hungry audience that wants to experience some live entertainment again. And I've felt that for the past few years. It just seems like live comedy in particular is really, just kind of coming to its own again. And that's something too. Like I'm putting together like tour dates and stuff like this. And stuff like that over, for the rest of the year. And I love performing for libertarian audiences. I love it. It's just, there's something cool about like performing for your people, but not pandering, like performing for your people, but you're going to do what you would, the type of, the material that you would do anywhere, so yeah, I think there's like definitely like an untapped resource there of an audience. For liberty-minded people, that if anybody's booking, if anybody's looking for an MC at your wedding or anything, let me know. Hit me out.
Hell yeah! I've talked about this on the show a couple of times, but I have always been a really big fan of comedy in general. My dad is a really big comedy fan, and so I was watching George Carlin and Louis C.K. and Louis Black stand-up specials at like 7 and 8, and it has been like in my blood since before I can really fully remember things. My dad borrowed my MP3 player once at like I think it was like 9. He went on a work trip, and I was like, okay, you can borrow this for the plane ride, and he had like an extra long bus ride or something like that too. And I was like, you can borrow this, but you can't take anything you put on it back off. You have to give me all of the music that you're going to listen to. And we made a deal, and I got it back, and it had Delirious, but Eddie Murphy's
Yeah.
stand-up was on there. Bunch of tracks from Royal Canadian Air Force, which
I don't know that.
is like it's a Canadian sketch comedy group from like the early 2000s, which are great and like really out there. They do this one where these two cops like break into it or like bust down the doors of a church and try to arrest the pastor for being open on a Sunday.
Okay.
And it's just like stupidity and hilarity breakdown. But yeah, comedy has definitely been a big part of my life for most of it. And I feel like people in the art form almost have a duty to be semi-libertarian in their mindset. Like they are the only people that can really touch on specific issues and call out specific people and like make certain conversations happen, because everybody else, it would be too contentious if you said those things or did those things or pushed that button. You can't do that from a news broadcast or something like that. But comedy's kind of in this special place with, I think maybe music is about the only other kind of thing where sometimes you can push those issues and make people listen to something that they wouldn't otherwise listen to. And, you know, all the way back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was people were getting arrested for pushing that issue and, you know, continuing to do so. And thank God we're not in those kinds of times anymore. But I feel like the industry dropped the ball for a little bit and got too scared to push those boundaries and call out those specific people. And I think that's also kind of writing over these last 10 years also, where there's, you know, you kind of got the resurgence of people actually saying like, what the fuck is going on with this shit? Like,
there's always been like a connection between, you know, like comedy and free speech. And it's sort of like, comedy, with comedy and free speech, the idea is like, nothing's off limits as far as, a conversation, as far as, subject matter, and like comedy can be a way in, a way to open that, to open that door. And yeah, I mean, as far as like, the gate, the attempts to, gatekeep, over the years, it's definitely been a lot harder with, alternative media, for people to do that. And then look, I mean, they turn around, SNL fired Shane Gillis before, the first week that he was, hired. And now the guy's hosted 2 times, it's just, they're sort of like, in a world, 20 years ago, Shane would be on that show and he'd be great. And, he'd be making, movies and stuff. And, it was just obvious, but yeah, I'm feeling like I wrote a book about That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. And I kind of, sort of like, did I call it? I'm like, here we are. We've been. I think it was like shortly after the release of the book. There was, one could argue, there's definitely a rebirth of comedy. But I think it's definitely worth remembering too. Just how crazy shit was, especially 5 years ago. During the COVID stuff. Fuck, man, that was those are some crazy times, and it's really important to not forget just how tenuous all this stuff is. How so much can go wrong. Whether it's it appears naturally or it goes wrong in a lab somewhere and then it leaks out. So much could go wrong.
Yeah. I almost wonder if there's a few super small silver linings to COVID, and I wonder if one of them was kind of this aspect where you had a bunch of people who wanted to perform live events, whether that be music or comedy or whatever. You had a bunch of people who wanted their place of business to be the place to have live events. And there were a bunch of people who wanted to go to live events. And the government was saying, no, none of you guys get your way. Yeah. And really only the people who were okay with breaking the law were able to succeed for especially a couple of months there, where you finally had businesses that weren't requiring vaccine passports necessarily and kind of on the down low. And, you just kind of like pulled your mask up as you walked through the door and dropped it back down, you were okay. And they were, doing live events in the back room where nobody could really tell. And, there was a couple months where we were like alcoholics during Prohibition to try to do anything like this. And I think it kind of fucked over a bunch of the people who did follow the rules and really gave those of us who weren't following the rules just that head start to the reopening, because a bunch of restaurants were already operating at max capacity, already doing the whole thing, already out the gate, when everybody who was like, are we sure? Okay, I guess maybe we can start doing takeout.
Right.
You're fucked.
Yeah. Well, we had my wife and I had our first child in March of 2020. He's about to be 5. He's a COVID baby. So for us, we were very much, kind of, isolated. It was just the 3 of us, like in our apartment in Brooklyn. And so many places were closed down or not operating, and we weren't, didn't understand, like, day to day, like, what was happening. But we used to walk around our neighborhood a lot in Brooklyn Heights, and there's this a couple of great pizza places, and we were going by this one pizza place on Atlantic Avenue, Table 187, which is a phenomenal place.
Love that place.
Yeah, and so we had passed by, on our walk, like, so many days in a row, and then this day there were 2 or 3 2-person tables outside, like right up against the pizzeria, and we were like, oh my god, what does this mean? And they were open, and I went in, and I'm like, can we sit there? And like, yeah, you could sit there. And I'm like, okay. And we got like a pie, and we set the pie down, and my wife and I were sitting across from each other. Our son was in the stroller right next to us, and we were eating pizza in a restaurant, at the at the pizzeria. And it was like, it felt like we hadn't done this in so long. It felt like, the war had just ended, it's like now it was like rebuilding, and it brought us so much joy, and we just felt so great about it that the next day we were like, we got to go back. We got to go back and do this. And then we went back, and the tables and the chairs were gone. And I went inside to ask what happened. Well, somebody who lived in the neighborhood had called either 311 or 411 or whatever to launch a complaint that this pizzeria had tables outside set up. And apparently, I don't know if it was a health violation or however they wanted to play it, but they were given a choice. It was basically, if you have them out there and you get caught, you're going to be fined thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And it was so revealing about, like, wow, there are people out there who are willing to go through all this, make delicious pizza, try to make people happy. There are people like me and my wife, and who want to support those people and want to feel, enjoy life. And then there are people who were on the outskirts looking in and saying, like, I'm going to call the fucking police to make sure that we put a stop to that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, although David, I don't know how many lives they saved with that phone call, but it could be in the millions. They saved so many millions of lives by, I'm not able to get my sausage and pepper, delicious Table 87 pizza.
Yeah. And dude, the dumbest shit was, I was seeing it all over the place, especially in lower Manhattan, where they had like the pod outside. Once you were allowed to eat outside, you had those like temperature controlled pods that you could eat in. So it was an inside outside that was somehow better than like an outside inside. Because one of my favorite restaurants was this like French spot in on like I think it is East 13th, like Manhattan, and half of it was kind of an open air, like garden-y place. And I was like, surely they can be open, but since it's between the two actual buildings, it's not out by the road. It's like technically actually inside, even though there's no roof and no front door. It's just a gate. It's still inside, and so they were still closed. And I actually never. They reopened for like 2 months after COVID, and then closed up for good because they just couldn't anymore. And I hosted a bunch of events there. I did my like election night watch party there. It was like my favorite restaurant in the city that just never made it through after COVID. And there was plenty of other great spots like that. It was just so dumb, the rules on it. It made no sense. I thankfully I moved out of New York City in November of 2019. I moved up to New Hampshire to work on Tulsi Gabbard's presidential campaign. Then that lasted until March. And I just went back home to stay with the family for, a couple of weeks to figure out what my next move was going to be. And then there was no next move because the whole world shut down. And so I was back upstate, like Syracuse area, with my family during most of the lockdowns. And I am so thankful that I was not also still stuck in Brooklyn for that, because that would have, I don't know, I would have gone crazy because I was living alone at the time too. When I moved out of New York City, I would have just been in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself. I would have lost it.
Yeah, I think it's so important to remember those times, especially I'm like I'm out in Jersey now, but I still check in on my old neighborhood and sit in New York City politics and stuff. I liken it to I keep a Nextdoor app, my Nextdoor account open for my old neighborhood, because it's like checking in on an ex-girlfriend whose life is getting worse and worse without me in it. So there's some, schadenfreude there, but then also there's just, real, just devastation, just being devastated over things that are happening. But it's important to remember those times, because, when people are, coming out against cars and, and want to talk about, walkable cities and all that, it's like, hold on a second. We're only 5 years away from this fucking pandemic, where like I was so blessed to be able to have a car that I could drive out of Brooklyn and get away. The idea of being like stuck in a place during, God knows what'll happen next is not ideal, to say the least.
That's a good point. I didn't have a car for most of the time that I lived in New York City, and that was probably one of my least libertarian opinions, is that I was also super into the adding of the bike lanes and the kind of slightly more walkable, more bikeable, less car centric city, because it's already so many people walking. Let's make it better for those people who aren't doing the thing. But I still have mixed feelings on that one. Now I'm in Texas, where nothing is walkable. And so,
and why would you? I mean, it's 120 degrees out too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Today it got down to 62 towards the evening, and it was really windy, and we still don't have a dining room table yet. But we have patio furniture, so we're eating all 3 meals a day out on the back porch. And my son was like, I'm freezing. It's freezing out here. I'm going to turn into an ice cube. And I was like, we just moved from upstate. There's still snow in our yard in New York, and it is 62, and we're in shorts and t-shirts. Shut up. It's fine. It's been great, but very, very glad to move out of the the snow and the bullshit and to be in Texas, but it is a little bit annoying because I am a really big walker. I like walking places.
Yeah,
and doing that thing.
That's a huge thing. Yeah,
and I'm 3/4 of a mile from the closest like even like smoke shop corner store, something like that. It's like 5 or 6 blocks away, and I'm just like I don't feel like doing that nearly as often as I used to do the block and a half walk back home. But before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find you, upcoming tour dates, upcoming shows and sketches or anything. Give them all the spiel.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, you guys can find me at thelouperez.com. That's my website. I am at the Lou Perez on most social media. Yeah, you can pick up my book anywhere. That joke isn't funny anymore. I narrate the audiobook. And I'm doing a few shows with Young Americans for Liberty. I'm doing their show in St. Louis in April and their show in DC at the end of April. So I think it's April 12th and April 26th. So, if you guys are around in those areas, come say hi.
Hell yeah. Guys, you heard him. Make sure that you like this video and are following the channel so that you can stay tuned on all of the awesome things that are happening here at FSM. Make sure you share this around to all of your friends and family that still have a sense of humor and that think that Lou's jokes are still funny. And definitely check out the links below to see his tour dates or grab his book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, BAM. It's all over the place. And as mentioned earlier, his video, James Bond Fights Hate Speech, is all over the internet, including on Elon Musk's timeline. So go find that, watch it. It's fucking hilarious. We will be back here next week, but definitely make sure that you're coming back and watching all the great content. Lou, thanks for coming on. This was absolutely great.
Thanks, man. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys. Until next time, keep up the fight.